Hello! Welcome to one more class of the archiCad 23 course. In this class, you'll see a little bit more about work environment, the software interface. You can open the template file again. So here in archiCad, we have the basic menus, starting with File. Is where you can create a new file, open, save. We have the external content, libraries and objects, and some other functions. After that, the edit menu, where we can execute, for instance, the commands of move, like drag, rotate, mirror, elevate, and so on. Later, it will be explained more. In view, there are options like grid, guidelines, snap, and so on. In design, we have tools related to constructive elements. Document, we have all the document tools and settings of pen sets, model view options, graphic overrides, renovation filter, and other commands concerning to rendering and layout. In options is where you can find the project preferences, as we saw on last class. Teamwork is usually when you make a network to have many people working in the same file via internet. Window, we have the toolbars and palettes to be added. Twinmotion, I have this bar because I added a plugin to Twinmotion. It's a very cool software for rendering and video animations. And help, there are some files of support to help you with some archiCAD issues. So we have these basic menus, and below there is a standard bar that we're gonna explore more during the course. And there are some other bars that I like to work. I have here two bars, 3D visualization and arrange elements. They are already here, but I will drag it to my working area, close, to show you how to add these bars. You can click on Window, Toolbars, and here you can see many other bar types, and I will add 3D visualization. So I can click here at the left side, and I will drag this bar. I will place here. So I will place this standard bar. And click in Window, Toolbars, Arrange Elements. I'll place this another bar. It is a bar with some commands of group, ungroup, suspend groups, and drawing orders. So next one is the info box. This horizontal bar changes according the tool you are using. Here I am with selection tool, the arrow. And if I select to wall, for example, I can see the wall options like layer, geometry methods, and structure, floor plan and section. I can drag, slide this tab to see more options here. So now I can write layer, geometry method, reference line location, structure, floor plan and section, and other options. And every tool has this button. It is settings dialog, where you can enter and define many settings about the tool, like the levels, wall height, building materials, 2D representation, surfaces, and layers. Then for each element, the info box change its information. If I change to column, you can see beam, and rolling the mouse scroll over the bar, you can access more options. So you can roll the scroll of the mouse and access more options in this info box. So in this bar at the left called Toolbox, we have first the selection tools. After, in design, we have basically the constructive tools: wall, door, window. Opening tool is a new tool in archiCAD 23. Column, beam, slab, stair, railing, roof, shell that has some structural types, skylight, curtain wall, morph that is used to model free shapes, object where you enter on archiCAD library, zone tool, and mesh tool used to model the terrain. And in document, we have tools for documentation concerning architectural drawings, dimensions, level dimension, text, label, fill, line, arc and circle tool, polyline, drawing, section, elevation, interior elevation, worksheet, detail, and change tool. And in more, we have some additional tools like grid, wall end, corner window tool, lamp, radial dimension, angle dimension, spline, hotspot, figure, and camera. So that is our toolbox. In the middle of the screen, as in all softwares, we have the working area. And here on archiCAD, we have these tabs where you can alternate the drawings. And here you can see, for example, the layout book, the master layout, 3D, and it can increase your navigation speed. In this bottom bar, we have some tools of zoom. For example, the fitting window that works like the zoom extend on AutoCAD, fitting all content in your screen. The set orientation is a command to rotate the drawing view without rotating the model indeed, so you keep the coordinates, the relative position to the sun, and rotates only the drawing. There are scale options. And after that, we have some settings that we'll see in more details during the course, as layer combinations, structure display, pen sets, model view options, overrides, renovation filter, and dimensions. And at the right, we have the navigator. You can see that my navigator is fixed, but maybe yours isn't this way. I will drag it and close to show you that in the beginning, the navigator comes as a pop-up. So here you close, and when you open the archiCAD for the first time, you have this pop-up and the navigator works here. So you can click to open and close, and it is good to have a biggest working area, but I prefer to work with fixed navigator. So I go to Window, Palettes, click Navigator, and then I drag it to the right side. And I can work with this fixed element, including the possibility of redimensioning. You can increase or decrease sliding this bar. In the navigator, there are 5 buttons. The first one is Project Chooser, where you can show an organizer, in which you could put the view map at the left, layout book at the right, and simply dragging the drawings into layout book in a fast way. The next icon is Project Map, When you start a project in archiCAD, the first drawings will be created here in stories, sections, elevations, and others. We have 3D representations in perspective and axonometry. Schedules, we're gonna use door and window schedules, list of components, and so on. So here is project map. Next is view map, where we're gonna save the views with specific settings. When we choose the option of save view, you can define certain parameters like layer combinations, scale, structure, display, pen set, model view options, graphic override, renovation filter, the floor plan cut plane settings, dimensioning and zooming. All these drawings are saved here in ViewMap and taken to Layout Book, where you have the sheets and you can define layout types and its dimensions, texts, labels, etc. You can insert your logo. And to finish, there is Publisher Sets, where you can define the exportation options in PDF or DWG, for example, and you have other file types, and so here you can export your files in many formats. Okay, this was the class about work environment. Wait for you on next class. Bye bye. Hello, welcome to class 4 of the archiCAD 23 online course. In this class, we see how to use some archiCAD tools and shortcuts. So you will learn basic commands to start working on archiCAD. To give an example, I will choose the wall tool. Here on Info box, I have all the information content that is inside the settings dialog, and moreover, we have the geometry method to model this wall. So here we have different geometry methods that we can choose. Clicking here on settings dialog inside this menu, we have many settings about the wall. First, in top link, we can choose the story to link the wall height. For in case of changing the upper floor level, the wall height changes together. So in this case, the wall height would be defined by the distance from upper story. So if the slab has 10 centimeters, the value here should be -10. And the wall height is 280. Choosing the option not linked, I have the base level and wall height, but this height will not change in the case of changing upper story level. I am working centimeters, so I will type 3 meters, and this level is the wall base relatively to home story, that here is ground floor. Project 0 is the global level in relation to my project as a whole. Here we can choose the wall representation in 3 ways. Basic is a simple wall used in preliminary design. It has no finishes. Composite is a wall with finished layers used in executive projects to specify wall core, mortar, and finished materials, for example. We have some predefined patterns in archiCAD. And complex profile, where we can draw different profiles to be extruded as a wall. Here I'll keep basic. Below, we can set the wall thickness, and it can be a straight wall, trapezoid, or polygonal. Choosing trapezoid, we can define the thickness in both edges of the wall. I'll keep this straight wall. And here we have the option of slanting the wall or making a difference. Here I can slant the wall or making a difference between base and top thickness. Reference line determines the modeling by outside face, center line, or inside face. And you can even apply an offset to do it. In floor plan and section, we can define 2D representation. Show on stories, you can choose in which stories the element will be seen. Floor plan display, the element can be displayed as projected, cut, symbolic, outlines, and overhead. And show projection defines the view range in floor plan. In cut surfaces, when the wall shall be cut, it will be with solid line in this case, and cut line. Here I am with 0.4, pen 104. The outline settings, I will change here, slide in the tab. The outline settings, when the wall view is not cut, you can choose the line type, its thickness, and overhead lines when it is above the floor plan cut plane. Going to model, we have here the model tab, and here we set the surface materials, and I should explain that the surface is different from building materials chosen up here. So this building material is about the wall core, the material in the middle of the wall. So I can have a wall in masonry block, and in the surface displayed here in the model, it could be, for example, white paint. And turning on the buttons, I can see these surface materials, and I can choose which surface shall be covered with some material. And clicking in this padlock, I can link all surfaces, choose the same material, and change at the same time. So here I could choose a white paint, for example. In classification properties, let me close these tabs above. And in classification properties, we have some detailed information. It's an option for you to use or not these settings. There are very technical information like fire resistance rating, thermal transmittance, and some information about the construction's technologies, environmental, and even production cost. In the end, you can select the layer in which this element will be. I'll keep arc 4 walls. Okay. And now I can model. As I said, I need to select a geometry method, and I'll keep the single wall. In my working area, I do a first click to start the wall and second click to finish. I can also type a specific distance. First click to start the wall, type D, and inside the box I'll put 300, for example, that is 3 meters, and press enter to finish. I can also define the angle, so I make a first click, type D of distance, and I can press the arrow down in my keyboard. So now I am in angle box, and I'll put 30 degrees. Press enter, and this is the result. I also have other geometries. Here you see a little arrow at the right side of the icon. You need to click and keep the mouse button pressed to see another options. I have, for example, these sequential walls, that is chained walls, and I can do many clicks in sequence. and double click to finish. And rectangle, start clicking, and you can finish clicking or type the dimensions. So I will type, for example, 7 meters, arrow down, 4 meters, press enter, and you can observe that these dimensions are relative to reference line. So in this case I was using outside face, so these were the external dimensions, and wall thicknesses were put inside. Changing the option to inside face, these dimensions are relative to internal space, and wall thicknesses were played to outside. So here I put 7 meters, 3 meters, press enter, and then I can check the dimensions using the measure tool. So it is inside face. And as the idea of inside or outside depends on the context, there is the option of invert the reference line. So here I am with this wall, and I could click in here, invert the reference line, considering it as outside face. Now, speaking about the modeling precision, we have the snap guide. So using here the wall, a single wall. The snap guide is this blue dashed line that helps you to do a straight element. You can turn on and off the snap guide here on this button. And we have some options. But to guarantee that you are doing a straight modeling, you can press Shift, and holding Shift, you keep a straight position. Retiring the Shift, you can change the orientation, and pressing Shift again, you could lock the wall in different angles, like 45 or 90 degrees. So always pressing Shift, you can do it. Now I'll speak about favorites. On each tool, you see at the right side of the icon a little black arrow, and pressing it you can see the favorites that comes in archiCad as predefined objects. Taking the stair as example, you could choose a concrete stair, a beam supported stair, a metal stair, and taking it as presettings, you could model your own object. And it's possible to save your own favorites. So I could have, for example, a composite wall. So here I have a type of composite wall, and I could save it as a favorite, going to settings dialog, clicking in this star icon. This is the favorite. This new favorite, and then I write a name for this favorite, and then I can save it. Well, now we're gonna see how works the selection tools. I will erase these elements and model a slab and walls to show examples. So I come here on slab 2, I'll make a slab and 2 walls. I'll make a bigger slab. And so I'll make some examples using these elements. The main selection tool is the arrow, and when I have a selected element, it's just to press ESC key to undo selection and come back to the arrow. With selection arrow, this first option determines the way you select the element, In the first one, making a rectangle selection, you need just to touch the objects to select them, not being necessary that these objects be entirely inside the rectangle. So, making the rectangle selection, just touching the elements, they are selected. In the second option, archiCad will select just the objects entirely inside the rectangle. So here, just the objects inside the rectangle are selected. And third option is like on AutoCAD, making the rectangle from left to right, the object needs to be inside. And from the right to the left, you need just to touch elements and they are selected. Here we have some geometry methods beyond the rectangle. You can choose one of them. And there is the magnet. When it is in blue, is active. And when the magnet is turned on, you see the magnet in the selection arrow passing the mouse over elements. And it means that in any point I click into this slab, it will be selected. But with the magnet turned off, you cannot select the slab clicking in the middle of the slab, but you would have to do a rectangle selection or clicking on a node to select it. So generally I like to keep magnet turned on, but in some cases you should press the space bar to turn it off just for a moment. For example, I could want to do a rectangle selection in this wall, but making a click, it selects the slab. So I press the space bar to turn off the magnet temporarily, and then I make the rectangle around the wall. And to add selection, you can hold the Shift key pressed, and then you click to add selection, and press ESC to deselect all. And also I have the marquee tool. It's this rectangle. It is a fixed selection. So here you can choose between the single floor option, the single selection, or the method for all floors. So using this first one, it selects just the elements on current story. I'll put here rectangle option. You can click Ctrl A to select all, just in this floor. And using this other option, you can select the elements in all floors. Press ESC to exit, and it's done. Now you see archiCAD's shortcuts. I put on the screen a briefing of archiCAD's shortcuts. You can do a print screen if you want. So there is a shortcut to alternate between floor plan view and 3D window. I could make it by clicking on the tabs. Here I have 3D window and ground floor. So I can do it clicking on the tabs, but F2 and F3 keys make this change. So F3 I go to 3D window and F2 floor plan. On 3D there is the orbit command available in this bottom bar. Here I have orbit. And using orbit you can click with mouse left button and rotate it. Pressing the mouse scroll you do the pan, dragging the model. Another option to use the orbit command is using the O key. So pressing O, you have this shortcut to the orbit command. Another option in 3D is isolate specific models, specific elements in the view. So you can select the elements. I select this wall, for example, and press F5. Pressing F5 again, the full model returns. Selecting the wall, We also have some options. Clicking on the node, a floating palette appears here, and I could stretch the wall with this option stretch. Clicking on the wall edge, another option appears, like insert new point or curve edge. We also have the basic options, so I can drag, rotate, mirror, elevate, and multiply. So using the option drag, for example, I can move the wall even with a specific distance. So I'll type 5 meters, press enter, and so I can drag this element. And speaking a little bit more about these shortcuts, going to Edit, Move, you can see these basic commands and its respective shortcuts. So drag is Ctrl D, rotate Ctrl E, mirror Ctrl M. Here I changed the shortcut because the recording video software was not accepting this shortcut. There was a conflict, but I advise you to keep the original shortcuts. So after that you see other shortcuts. So let's practice. Ctrl D, I move the object. I simply click or type a distance. So Ctrl D, type in distance, 2 meters. Ctrl Shift D, you drag a copy keeping the existing element. D, you drag a copy keeping the existing element at the same place. Ctrl E is the rotate shortcut. So you do a first click as a rotating point, second click as a reference, and moving the mouse you rotate. Ctrl Shift E, you do the same thing but keeping the existing element. Mirror command is Ctrl M. So you do a reference line to mirror. And there is Ctrl Shift M, keeping the original element unchanged. Ctrl Shift M, reference line, and you mirror the object keeping the existing element. Another very useful shortcut is Ctrl U for multiply command. I will erase these elements and insert object to show it. Clicking on object 2, I do a click to insert a chair. So pressing Ctrl U, keeping the chair selected. In this menu, we have the options drag, rotate, elevate, and matrix. And below, graphical input method, increment and spread, increment, spread, distribute, and distribute -1. We have the options, the number of copies, vertical displacement, pick path before input, defines a reference way to do copies, and rotation of copies. To make a first example, I choose drag, increment and spread, vertical displacement 0, rotation of copies none, and click OK. I do a first click in the center of the chair and need to put an initial value in distance. I'll put 150. I'll press enter, and after that I move the mouse, and moving the mouse, copies are added on each 1 meter and 50. I do a final click, and here are the copies. So I do Ctrl Z to undo. Another option is to use drag with increment only. In this option, I can define the copies before. So I will put 7 copies. And then with number of copies already defined, I can click and just define the distance among them. I will put 170. So another option, I'll make a copy here. And another option is the rotate. Using spread, I could define the angle among copies, so 30 degrees. Okay. I'll put the mouse over the object. Without clicking and moving the mouse, the snap guide appears. The first click is to set the central point, and the second click in the center of the chair, moving the mouse. On each 30 degrees, archiCad makes these copies. I do a final click, and it's done. Another possibility is using randomize, the randomize option. So here I could, in rotation of copies, choose randomize. So doing the same steps, I'll click at the center point on the chair, and now I have the chairs copied in different orientations. Now I'll show the options of distribute copies. I'll copy here. I'll copy a chair, Ctrl U. I'll choose here drag, distribute, and here I'll put a final distance. So I click, I have 7 copies, randomize the options, and I can do I can put a final distance, and the copies will be equally distributed along the way. So I'll put here 16 meters, and the chairs are distributed equally. I also choose the -1 option. So it does the same thing, but the final point does not insert the object, and it influences on the distribution of the object. In the last example, I'll show the pick path function. I will keep just one chair on the screen. So let's erase these chairs. I will draw some walls in sequence. So let me choose the wall, chained wall, and I'll click here. I change to curved option. Come back to straight. And finish. Align the chair. Or press Ctrl D. Putting the mouse in these nodes. The snap guide appears. I will align this chair. And keeping it selected, Ctrl U. I'll put drag, increment and spread, and I will mark pick path before input, and also mark rotate to path. Okay. Placing the mouse over the wall, you see a reference line. I will click here, and an offset line appears, and I click in the center of the chair. Now, I choose the copy distance. I'll type 120, press enter, and moving the mouse, the chairs are copied and rotated according to the wall design. I'll do a final click to finish. and then you see this copy using the pick path function. And on 3D, we could also use these commands. So select the walls, Ctrl U, and now let's elevate elements. I use increment, 3 copies, OK, and then I click on wall base, after on wall top, and copies are elevated. Okay, this was the class about tools and shortcuts. Wait for you on next class. Bye bye.